Hi, friends. Happy Tuesday. Hope everybody is doing well and enjoying spring. And if you're in Tennessee, you know that spring is this week because it's 60 one day and then it's 80 the next day, and there's pollen everywhere. You're all congested, you got itchy, watery eyes, all that kind of thing. Hey, we've got something for you. So, in the month of April, which starts today, our special is going to be 5 Vitality Boost sessions for $50. That's 5 sessions for $50, taking them to $10 a session, specifically just for the month of April. And that's because the Vitality Boost does things like dries up the sinuses, decreases inflammation, helps to boost immunity. So it is the perfect thing for this month while pollen is going everywhere, just to keep it under control. So if you want to try it out or you want to add it to packages and things that you've already purchased with us, give us a call at the clinic or email us at contact@clearpathmedical.net or stop by. We're happy to hook you up with this deal all through the month of April. So, next announcement that I have for you before we get into the study that we're going to talk about. Remember, Low Carb for Better Health. The tickets are up. They are for sale. You can visit lc4bh.com. That's lc4bh.com and get your tickets. You can also use the link to get your room. And if you want to attend the event and you want to stay at the park, you really need to go ahead and hop on getting your tickets and booking the room. September is a hot time for parks in Tennessee to go visit them as fall starts kicking in. And if you wait, you may not be able to get a room at the park. So if you want in, you need to go now, buy your ticket to the event, and book your room at the park so you can make sure that you can get there. So last week we announced that we are adding a new body sculpting device, the T-Shape 2. You may have seen the post yesterday. If you are in our area and you are interested in helping to tone and tighten skin and muscle, maybe you've been on a weight loss journey and your body just doesn't look so great after it's been deflated, or you're unhappy with a particular area, working your hiney off and you can't get it to go away, the T-Shape 2 is for you. And that will be coming here within the just next couple of months. If you want in on the exclusive launch offers that are going to be just offered when we first launch, give us an email right now at contact@clearpathmedical and just tell us, hey, I want in on the launch offers, and we'll send you more information as we have that and up and going. Last announcement before we get into our study today, and this is one I need your help with. April 22nd, it is a Tuesday, we are having 2 free community events. The first is another health screening. So we did this a couple months ago. We're going to do this every once in a while because we truly want people to have information that is going to change their health, that is going to empower them to make decisions to change their health. So April 22nd from noon to 4, we're doing free open to the community health screenings. You're going to get a blood pressure, a blood sugar, and you're going to get a biometric scale reading. That biometric scale reading gives you your percent body fat, your muscle mass, your visceral fat score. These are all amazing things that you can take and make health decisions based off of it. And we're going to give it to you free, no strings attached. Then at 6 p.m. at the Dickson County Building on Hensley Drive, also where the Dickson County Library is housed, Dr. Ken Berry and I will be doing another live to the community, open to anybody who wants to learn, who has questions, is just interested. So please come join us. We can seat 80 people. Last one we did, we had around 40 people. We would love to max out this space and get as many people in there, getting information to people so that they can have the power to make changes in their life and live happier and better lives. So that is April 22nd, noon to 4 here in the clinic, free screenings, and then 6 p.m. at the Dickson County Building, live with Dr. Ken Berry. Doors were open at 5:30, not before because we got to set up. So at 5:30, the doors open, we let everybody in, and then we start right at 6 o'clock. All right, let's get on with the study that I want to discuss with you guys today. So I often get asked about diet drinks. Can I have them? Can I not have them? Are they good for me? Are they bad for me? What should I do? Well, this study is for you. So far, my answer to that question has been maybe you have to know yourself, because there's some people that it can make them hungrier, and overall it just is not a good thing for their plan. So know yourself. If it doesn't bother you, it doesn't interfere with your plan, then okay, maybe you can have diet soda. But if for you include them and it's not going so well, then you got to kick them out. Well, today's study has completely changed my mind on that. And I want to give you this information so that you can make the decision for yourself. Is it right? Is it not right? So this study will actually be published on May 6th. It'll come out in the May 6th edition of the journal called Cell Metabolism. And it is titled Sweetener Aspartame Aggravates Atherosclerosis Through Insulin-Triggered Inflammation. So what is aspartame? Aspartame is a non-nutritive or non-sugar sweetener. It is in almost all diet drinks that are out there, specifically Diet Coke and Coke Zero. So the Diet Coke has only aspartame. Coke Zero has aspartame and another sister type sweetener, but they both end in the last phrase. So we know they're chemically very structural, but Coke Zero has a little less aspartame in it than regular Diet Coke. Aspartame itself is about 200 times sweeter than sugar itself. So sucrose, meaning when it hits your tongue, it hits it at a 200 times sweeter taste than sugar itself. The FDA actually has recommended limits on aspartame in the diet. I didn't know this till I read this study, that it is 50 milligrams per kilogram per day. Interesting, Europe actually has recommendations for this as well, and it is lower than the US. And we see this commonly in pesticides and all kinds of different things, that Europe is kind of a step ahead of us on recommended limits. I digress. So in the US, when people are consuming diet drinks, they often are consuming way more than 50 milligrams per kilogram per day. And we see this in all processed foods. There may be limits or recommendations that are set, and we tend to exceed them. And that's because things that we exceed, we tend to be addicted to. So I think that is going to be the case for aspartame as well. There's been previous reports linking current diseases like obesity and diabetes and cancer and cardiovascular disease and allergies and neurological conditions and behavioral disorders with aspartame. But there's always been kind of this lingering question on, is it that there's a causal link? Does aspartame actually cause these things? Or is it that people who say have diabetes and obesity are trying to cut back on their sugar, and so they gravitate more towards these diet beverages? So is it truly a contributor factor, or is it more of a coincidence that they're there and not being related? Now, the last couple of months, so in February and March of 2025, I've done several videos on cardiovascular disease and what is the root cause of it, what is the things that have the highest risk associated with it. And I'd recommend you go back to our YouTube channel at Decker Less Carbs. You should like it, but you should, and follow us, but watch these videos that are showing specifically that elevated insulin levels and hyperinsulinemia rank very high on the causative factors for cardiovascular disease. And that leads to the next question, is where does insulin come from? Well, insulin comes from the pancreas, specifically from the beta cells of the pancreas. And what happens is when you consume sugar, then your pancreas gets the message to send out the insulin, and it's usually a dose responsive thing. So the higher the amount of sugar, the higher amount of insulin that you pump out, the lesser sugar, the less insulin you pump out. But elevated sugar or sugar intake is not the only thing that can increase insulin. There are other things that can increase it. For example, things like free fatty acids can increase an insulin or cause an insulin spike. Amino acids can also stimulate an insulin action, but there is another one that is even lesser known, the parasympathetic nervous system. So activation of the parasympathetic nervous system through the vagus nerve stimulates the pancreas to secrete insulin. For some of you, that may sound like gibberish, and that's okay. Let's break it down just a little bit. So the parasympathetic nervous system controls all kinds of things in your body, one of it being your digestive system, but it also controls things like your heart rate and your immune system. These are involuntary things. Your parasympathetic nervous system is doing that for you. The vagus nerve is one of your main nerves in your body, runs kind of from head to tailbone kind of thing, but it is the main supplier for your parasympathetic nervous system. Your pancreas is part of your digestive system. So you basically have your parasympathetic nervous system, the nerves that go out that stimulate the digestive system, the pancreas being part of it. And when it gets that stimulus, it can produce insulin through activation of this nervous system. Hope that kind of explains a little the connectiveness and how it's all connected and how it works there. So let's get back to aspartame. Aspartame itself, or this non-nutritive, non-sugar sweetener, does not raise blood glucose. There's been several studies that have looked at that. However, other studies have shown that non-sugar sweeteners can stimulate the vagus nerve, which then sends the message to that digestive system, aka the pancreas, and to pump out more insulin. Over time, this can contribute to something like hyperinsulinemia or insulin resistance. And we know from those previous studies that I've talked about that hyperinsulinemia and insulin resistance are connected with cardiovascular disease. They are linked and they're together. Now, in those studies, we did point out a lot about lipids, or specifically LDL cholesterol, and there is some significance with LDL and lipids and cardiovascular disease. I would not sit here and try to tell you that they don't matter at all and that there's no connection. However, their risk association is much lower than things like this hyperinsulinemia. We also know that lipids are part of the plaque formation that is found when an artery gets blocked. You don't have a plaque without lipids being in there. But if lipids are not the main cause of cardiovascular disease, then how did they get to part of the plaque, which is the cardiovascular disease itself? Does that make sense? How did we get there? The answer lies in inflammation. When there's inflammation in the body produces things called monocytes and macrophages. These are inflammatory cells. So you have some damage, something there that's triggering inflammation in the cardiovascular system. I keep pointing to my heart, but it can be in multiple places in your body. But you have that inflammation. The body, in response to that inflammation, makes these monocytes and macrophages. They go to the side of the inflammation, or where the damage is. Those monocytes also bind to lipoproteins or cholesterol. And as they bind and they build that plaque or they build a thrombus, you get a blocked artery or cardiovascular disease. So your lipids are kind of responding to that damage. They're responding to the site of the crime, but they didn't cause the crime in the first place. Okay. All right, hope you're following me. Let's get on with the study. So this study was performed in rats, and you may be saying, why rats? And Amanda, why should I pay attention to a study that's performed in rats? Well, the simple of it is long-term studies are extremely difficult to do on humans. It's hard to lock humans in a cage to get long-term data. And if we want long-term data on humans, you have to study them for 20 to 30 to plus years, and nobody's going to want that. That's just too difficult to do. So you can do them on things like mice and get similar data in a much smaller time, and they don't mind as much being locked in cages as humans do. So one of the criticisms of this study might be that we're looking at diet soda in rats, and that rats or mice are not designed to drink diet soda. Well, in all honesty, neither are humans. There is no diet soda tree. There's no diet soda animal. It is not a natural or whole food. It is 100% man-made, and our bodies were not designed to eat or drink diet soda or anything like it. So if rats aren't meant to, we're not meant to on this thing either. So that argument doesn't really apply. On with the study. So these rats, they specifically fed ApoE negative rats. Now, ApoE, the reason they had to be ApoE negative is that is a marker that has a genetic predisposition for cardiovascular disease. So if you have an ApoE positive, then you're already going to be having a higher risk for cardiovascular disease. So by removing that, they remove that as a risk factor or a confluting factor within this study. The endpoint that they're looking for is they were looking at the aorta of these mice to see cardiovascular disease or see plaque formation, and they followed them for 12 weeks. Now, they looked at male and female mice. The reason they did that is because they didn't want someone to come back and say that this is a gender specific, like if you only did male mice, then this is only specific to males, or what about females, and is it specific to them? So they looked at both groups, and they fed them a range of aspartame dose over the course of 12 weeks, like I said, and they looked at them specifically at the 4-week mark, the 8-week mark, and the 12-week mark. Now, just a little bit of context here, a lifespan of a mouse is around 1 to 2 years. So watching them for 12 weeks is about the equivalent of starting in early childhood in a human and going to early adulthood in a human. Now, they did different variances of this aspartame. The standard one that's been common in research is about a 15% solution, but they studied anything from 0.05 to 15%. And 15%, just for a little bit of context, is about equivalent to a human consuming 3 diet beverages in a day. And if you are someone who consumes diet beverages, or you know someone that consumes diet beverages, 3 a day is actually quite common, but they also studied much, much lower that, would be down to like, I don't know, a quarter or half a diet soda a day. So they looked at a wide range there. So what they found is that in all doses of aspartame, small and large, there was a marked increase in atherosclerosis or plaque formation. However, there was some dose responsiveness, meaning that the higher the dose of aspartame, the more plaque that was built. They also did a control group of sucrose, so looking at glucose being fed to mice in the same way that the aspartame was fed, in the same ratios. It's just they used sugar instead of the aspartame. And what they found was interesting. It was not the same plaque formation. There was a delayed response. They really did not see the sucrose causing plaque formation until around 12 weeks. So there was this delayed response, still caused plaque, just a little bit delayed. They also looked at other metrics. So they measured things like oxygen, carbon dioxide, temperature, cholesterol levels, and all of them remained mostly unchanged, except for in the sucrose fed or the glucose fed mice. They had a small increase in their LDL, but the authors interpreted this to mean that the changes that they saw in the aspartame fed mice were more indicative of the aspartame itself causing plaque formation, since these other metrics didn't really change. You may be asking, well, what about the insulin? Because that's what the title of this study was talking about, an insulin-mediated response from aspartame. Did they check this? Why, yes, they did. So the process that they took is that they fed these little mice the aspartame for around 10 minutes, and then they waited 30 minutes to check their insulin. So they checked their insulin, gave them 10 minutes of feeding, and then waited 30 minutes and checked their insulin again. And what they found is that in all cases, the insulin was significantly elevated after consuming the aspartame. So it was most significant or statistically significant in the mice that were given that 15% or the equivalent of the 3 sodas in a day. It was elevated in all of them, but it was statistically significant when they got to that level of the 3 diet sodas in a day. And remember, aspartame doesn't increase glucose, but it did increase the insulin. So aspartame feeding for 12 weeks resulted also in a persistently elevated insulin. Basically, as they're checking these mice at these different intervals, the 4, the 8, and the 12, what they found is by the time they got to 12 weeks, the insulin wasn't just being elevated with the consumption of the aspartame, but it was remaining elevated, which means that long-term consumption can lead to long-term hyperinsulinemia or insulin resistance, which is the precursor to things like diabetes and cardiovascular disease. They also noted that despite the persistently elevated insulin, glucose levels were not elevated. They didn't go up with the consumption of aspartame, but there was definitely the spike of insulin supporting that there was this mechanism of action outside of sugar intake stimulated insulin, like the vagus nerve that has been a well-known one. So these researchers, they actually took it a step further. They asked the question, well, some might say that humans and rodents metabolize or break down aspartame differently or have a different response to aspartame. And they wanted to see if this is the truth. So they brought in a primate study, or monkeys, where they added aspartame to a drink at the same equivalent that they were doing the mice, but a little bigger percentage because they're bigger animals. They fasted the monkeys overnight. So they were completely fasted overnight, like if you're going in to do your blood work for your doctor. And they repeated that same pattern of check your fasting insulin, give them the the aspartame for 10 minutes and then recheck 30 minutes after that mark. What they found is that insulin was elevated at that 30-minute mark, but it tended to return to baseline after 60 minutes. What was interesting is that the insulin curve for the aspartame in these monkeys was almost equivalent to when they did the control when they were drinking the sugar. So you had almost the same response of insulin with sugar and with aspartame, even though the sugar level only went up when they were drinking sugar. So it appears that rodents and primates respond to aspartame the same. Now, the authors are very clear in this study to say that this only applies to aspartame. They can make no conclusions about other non-nutrient sweeteners or other non-sugar sweeteners. So you can't take this and apply it to things like stevia or erythritol or monk fruit or allulose. You can't. This only pertains to aspartame. I, for one, think it would be very interesting to take this same design and repeat it with all the non-nutritive sweeteners that are out there so that we can see what's going on. Because in reality, you and I, all of us, are one big experiment when we're taking these things in without this data. We're being the rats in the cage or the monkeys who are being fed this and seeing what kind of outcomes that it has on us. So does this study mean that I'm going to start telling people that they should not drink diet soda? You bet it is. 100%. I am going to tell them that they need to stop drinking diet soda, that it is not good for them. No more of this, well, it's less bad. No, it's bad. It's equally bad in some ways. Does this mean that you can have regular soda and it's safe? No, it does not. Regular soda with sugar, especially if you have diabetes, is a bad idea, but it still causes that insulin response, still causes the spike in the response. Now, the long-term hyperinsulinemia may take a little longer to develop, as the studies suggest, but you have to also remember that you're not consuming diet drinks in a context of an absolutely perfect world, an absolutely perfect diet with great sleep and low stress. No, we're consuming soda in conjunction with other crap and in an environment that is toxic to us. So my suspicion is when you consume that soda and with the other crap, you're going to get faster elevation of cardiovascular disease that's out there. So my professional opinion is that consuming soda in any version, diet or regular, is bad for you and will increase your risk of cardiovascular disease and other chronic conditions that have an insulin link to it. You may be asking, well, can I just do it on occasion? That sounds like an addictive talk to start with, but can you do it on an occasion? That's only something you can answer for yourself. Will one soda a week cause the same result as 3 sodas a day? No, it won't. But you cannot say that over time that one soda a week is not going to do damage, that is not going to cause harm. Now, me personally, I think I'm going to choose to not drink diet soda or zero products again. Now, I will drink something called Zevia, Z-E-V-I-A, on occasion. It is sweetened with stevia. There's no caramelization to it. It's got less chemicals. So if I'm going to have something on occasion, I will go with the Zevia product until a study like this is done on stevia to tell me otherwise. Now, most of the time, I'm just going to be drinking carbonated water because that's just my preference, and I think it is healthier for me. But you have to determine what is right for you. It is not my job to sit here and tell you, eat this, eat this, eat this, don't eat this, don't drink that. My job is to give you some information and let you take it and apply it to your life and decide what risk you are willing to take with your body. Because at the end of the day, you're responsible for your health. I'm not responsible for your health. But at least according to this study, it does appear that drinking diet beverages are not going to be in someone's best interest because it will increase your risk of cardiovascular disease, 100%. All right. I hope this has been informative. I hope you can take it and apply it to your life and decide what is right or not right for you. Keep in mind all of the announcements we had at the beginning. So remember the April special 5 Vitality Boost for $50. We got the T-Shape 2 coming. You need to send us an email if you want in on those launch offers. That's contact@clearpathmedical.net. Low Carb for Better Health. That is LC4BH.com. Go get your tickets now and book your room because they will book out. And then lastly, April 22nd, we have the health screening here at the clinic from 12 to 4. And then we will be finishing the day at 6 p.m. at the Dickson County Building on Hensley Drive with a free live community meetup with Dr. Ken Berry. I hope you will join us on the 22nd. I hope you will join us in the weeks before then here live on our channels. Until then, stay happy and healthy. Bye, guys.